Hey everyone, have you ever thought to yourself, my kids never listen. I'm always the one tidying up around here. He is always pushing my buttons. He argues over every single thing. Bedtime, worst time of the day. My husband is always so strict with the kids. My wife is way too soft. She always lets the kids walk all over her. Whew. These statements all have one thing in common, and when you realize what it is, you're actually going to be in an extraordinarily better position to handle these moments of conflict and stress, and sometimes even actually avoid them in the first place. What am I talking about? This is simply a brain habit that we all have. It's something that our brain is wired to do. Okay, welcome to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pinto. I'm a mum of two. I'm a best-selling author, international speaker, and obviously an emotional intelligence coach and consultant. I love all things emotionally intelligent parenting, and I'm really glad you're here today. This is going to be a great one. But before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to the First Nations people, elders, and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, so what I'm talking today about in this episode is confirmation bias. That's basically the fancy term for this brain habit that we're going to be talking about, and it is so powerful for parents and also for partners or husbands, wives, spouses. Like in your day-to-day life, you're going to notice this now that we have had this conversation, and I encourage you to really think about situations in your life and your day-to-day where you think, oh my goodness, I was doing that then, I was doing it here, and like just the impacts of it. So I first learned about confirmation bias when I was studying emotional intelligence, and I was like, why doesn't anyone know about this? Why didn't I know about this before? Like, why aren't they teaching us this in school? You know, we always, I feel like so many times I have those thoughts. Why aren't we teaching kids this stuff in school? It is so powerful. It is so beneficial. And anyway, a conversation for another episode. So life with our kids and life with my husband has become a lot more calm, a lot smoother, a lot more joyful, like less blow-ups, less arguments, less power struggles, less stewing in my own emotions, scrolling on my phone to calm myself down after an argument. Like it is wild. So let's talk a little bit about what confirmation bias is. I'll kind of refer to it as either confirmation bias or the brain habit because it's just an easy way to remember. So, confirmation bias is the tendency for your brain to search for, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs and opinions, whilst actually ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts them. So I think of it as my brain's habit of finding and recalling information or moments that agrees with what I already believe. And its habit of ignoring and like not seeing stuff that proves my beliefs wrong. So you need to know that your brain is doing this all the time, like even now, whilst you're listening to this podcast. Especially when you're learning something new, your brain is weighing up that information against what it already knows. It does not like changing its beliefs. So when you come across information that contradicts what you believe, your brain is like skeptical and sus, and it kind of goes, nah. I did a post recently, actually, on my social media about how we actually create our emotional reactions in our brain, that they are not triggered, right? A lot of people believe that emotions, like we've been taught for so long, that emotions are triggered in particular parts of the brain, like the amygdala. Fear is in the amygdala. And so I actually did a post after reading research and particularly a book called How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's a neuroscientist and a psychologist. And so I did a post about, hey guys, did you know that we actually create our emotions? Like we're the architect of our emotional responses and experiences in our brain. And we do this. Our emotional reactions are actually not just like triggered. And people lost their minds. Like they lost their minds over it because for so long, so many of us have believed that emotions are triggered in the brain. And so this was like actively challenging and conflicting with what people knew to be like true, quote unquote true. So that was really interesting. Let's move on to, I've got about 4 reasons why you need to know about confirmation bias and why it's going to be so impactful in your life as a parent. First one is that confirmation bias often increases conflict. Like, no one wants conflict. Don't we all want a smoother, calmer, happier life with our family? So have you ever told your husband or wife that all they do is sit on their phone at your kid's hockey game and they miss every important moment only for them to say, "What are you talking about? I just saw that goal and I was clapping and cheering." Cue giant argument in front of everyone. Ugh. Confirmation bias also paints situations and people in a negative light, which is unhelpful and unfair. So maybe you have this one person at work who you always feel like they are rocking up late, they are leaving early, they have to do all these different things for their only child, whilst you, who has 3 kids, you come to work on time, sometimes even you leave late, even though you have 3 kids with different needs. Your confirmation bias makes you only see their flaws and their faults. Confirmation bias can also make you make bad decisions. I coached a parent once who said they ignored all signs of their child being autistic. Preschool and then primary school teachers had mentioned some differences in their communication and their behaviors compared to other kids, but this parent said she just didn't see it until a friend who had an autistic child had a conversation with her about her child's behavior and their development, and then she said it was like she turned a corner. She realized things started to make a lot of sense, she said. She looked at her son's behaviors differently. It was like a new perspective opened up. She realized that he wasn't getting the right support at school. He needed to be in more of like a supportive school environment that could make the right accommodations for him. But instead she had signed him up for mainstream, and that was just not the place that he needed to be in. Confirmation bias can also make you a lot more reactive and less emotionally intelligent. I remember a while ago feeling like I was always the one doing the groceries, which take forever, and the one time I asked my husband to get a few things, he got all the wrong brands, and I was so frustrated. So I basically started an argument like, "Why do I even bother asking you? I may as well just do it myself." And his response was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, ugh! So that one backfired big time. Okay, so let me give you some examples. I know I've given you heaps already, but I think the more that we hear about examples and stories and things, the more you're going to be like, "Oh my God, I do that." And you'll be able to see it coming, which is really, really helpful. So you can kind of stop yourself in the moment and think more holistically or more kindly or compassionately about what is going on. So imagine a parent who believes that their child never listens. Without realizing, their brain is only going to notice all the times that they have to repeat themselves. They will laser in on these times, they will only focus on those, and they will also not see, like their brain will ignore moments where the child does what is asked, listens and follows the instruction the first time, and things like that. Next example this is really common actually. If you believe that one of your kids is always really poorly behaved, like they're always hitting their sister or always arguing or talking back, your brain will actually overlook instances of helpful, kind behavior and only notice your kid's behavior when they're hitting or arguing or talking back. It's proven that the brain will search for and find moments where your child's actions align with your belief of they are always disruptive and mean. And when your child is kind, your brain will either not even notice it won't register it, or it'll kind of play it down with a thought like, "Oh, it's only because it's his birthday that he's being so nice." It makes excuses without you even realizing. Okay, let's move on to some adult relationships like partners, spouses, and things like that. I coached a mum a while ago who complained that her other half never did their share of the housework, and that was a big problem for them, created lots of arguments. She only noticed the times that the chores were left undone, and she overlooked the times that her partner actually did them. Like she would complain about having to tidy all the time, and he would say, "Did you not even notice that I vacuumed today whilst you're at work?" And she was like, "Oh, I felt like such an idiot." Let's say there's a dad who believes his partner is not a good listener. his brain is going to manipulate his vision so that he pays more attention to the instances where his partner seems distracted, doesn't follow what he's saying, or maybe says something unrelated, and he will ignore or not even notice the moments where she actively listens and understands and hears what he's really saying. I hope you are having some of these like head nod moments and going, oh yeah, I've been there and I get that. Okay. There are some pros and mostly cons. That's probably a bit biased. There are some pros and cons of this confirmation bias, okay? Some of the advantages are that having confirmation bias does kind of increase like our mental efficiency, right? We can be more efficient because our brain will help us to make quick decisions by filtering information. Like we can't pay attention to everything all the time in every situation. It's too much for our brain to handle. So there is that advantage. Also, there is this kind of sense of like consistency and stability, meaning that like to maintain stability in your own beliefs and attitudes, that kind of gives us a sense of like psychological comfort. So no one, like our brains don't like being outside their comfort zone. They don't like change and things like that. So this kind of part of confirmation bias, I guess, can be helpful. However, let's move on to some of these disadvantages because I know I'm drumming the point in, but I think it's really, really helpful. So first one is that confirmation bias can give you a really distorted reality. It kind of gives you this like skewed perception of reality by ignoring contrary evidence. Cognitive bias can also make you make poor decisions. We kind of touched on that before, because what it does is it prevents you from considering all relevant information. So stuff you don't even see, like other situational factors that could actually really help you to see things from another perspective. You know the saying, you never know what people are going through? Yes, that. So, of course, confirmation bias can cause unnecessary conflict in relationships. We've spoken about this already as well. So now that my husband and I know about this, we have way less arguments. Like we're still human, but like way less conflict, right? This brain habit actually creates misunderstandings and conflicts because people fail to see the full picture. This is huge. Imagine calling your husband and asking for advice on something and he's blunt or dismissive and he's like, babe, I can't do this. I gotta go. Can't you just deal with it? And you think, he never has time for me. Like I need his help right now. Why do I even bother? Actually, later you realize that he was just dealing with someone at work who just opened up about their child's illness, something really big. And you think, oh, that's what was going on. Like I just saw it from my perspective. And then I ran away with the story in my head. I have a few tips for all of us, parents or spouses or partners, to manage confirmation bias, but also to kind of see it happening, right? You'll be able to start seeing this on the fly and go, oh my God, like I'm falling in that hole. So first one is, it probably sounds a lot more easy or simple than it is, but it's really powerful. It's be open-minded. Actively seek out information that challenges your beliefs. Consider the possibility that your initial assumptions may be incorrect. I love this saying and I teach it to my kids. It's not really a saying, it's like it's a concept or an approach. I say it to my kids all the time and I have to remind myself of it. It's give people the benefit of the doubt. I feel like that is so underrated and yet it is so powerful in relationships, like anywhere, home, work, wherever. Okay, second thing is ask for feedback. I love this stuff because it's a really super emotional intelligence-y. Like this is the psychology stuff that I love. If you can ask for feedback, yes, it is hard, but see if you can keep really open communication with people and ask them for their perspectives on your behavior so that you can get like a more balanced view. Start with someone you really trust, not to throw it back in your face later. Third one is reflect on your decisions. Before making a snap judgment on something, take just a second to consider if you're only focusing on the evidence that supports your belief. Next thing is to force yourself to practice perspective taking. I feel like this should have been number one. It's like one of my favorite. Try to see situations from the other person's point of view. You're going to have to like force this to begin with, right? Because we're all up in our own head and we can only see out of our own eyes. Like this takes practice and effort. What this does is help you to reduce bias, this confirmation bias, and improve understanding of like, what is that other person thinking, feeling, going through, like why are they saying what they're saying, and so on. Number 5 is keep a journal. If you're like a journaler or a writer or a note taker, it can be in your phone, right? On the fly when you're on the bus on the way to work or something. Write down your thoughts and your observations, especially after arguments or when someone has upset you. Reflect on it, and I promise you, you will recognize patterns of your behavior and your bias over time. Okay, we're almost done. Seek out opinions, different opinions to yours. This is hard, this is challenging, but if you can surround yourself with people who have different perspectives, having conversations with them to broaden your understanding, like watch shows on Netflix that you usually wouldn't watch, read books or listen to podcasts that are not your usual style, and see if you can notice when you're getting frustrated or triggered or bored. Can you allow and tolerate 30 minutes and try to learn something? Okay, the last one is educate yourself. Again, like maybe it sounds a little bit too simplistic, but the more that you learn about cognitive biases and how they work is really, really helpful. Being aware of these biases and these thinking habits can actually help you to recognize them in your own thinking. And you're probably going to recognize them in other people's thinking. And when you do that, don't be all judgmental and on your high horse. Like, be compassionate for them because you have these biases. Like, these are built into our brains anyway, right? So that person isn't choosing to like see things only from their perspective. We do that. We have to actively become aware of it and really practice to overcome it. Something I do want to ask you or like invite you to do is teach your kids about this. Even if they're really little, or if they're a teenager, like just adjust your language and the concepts, but you can teach kids about the way their brain works and how their thinking impacts their communication and their relationships. I think this is so, so powerful. And like I've said it before, but I'll say it again, I wish this stuff was taught in schools. So I promise you, now that you are aware of confirmation bias, I want you to actively work to counter it. Because it can be it's like you'll turn a corner. It's like a game changer. It can be really, really transformative. As a parent or a partner or a husband or a wife, like you will improve your relationships so much. And I would love to hear how you go. Something that is starting today, which is, as this episode drops, it's July 22nd, 2024. Something that is starting today is my 5-day online parenting conference. It's called Chaos to Connection. It's our 2nd annual one. I'm running it with my friend from Canada who I love. Her name's Lara Dawn. And we have 5 full days of sessions all around different parenting topics of dealing with big emotions, challenging behavior, partners on a different page, separation and divorce, neurodivergencies in the family. Like, we have all different topics, even screen time, devices, sex, like having these difficult topics and setting boundaries and how do we talk to these things about our kids. We've got topics on those too. Like, we've got sessions on pretty much anything you think about. And we have over 30 experts who have given their time and their gifts actually, and it is completely free. So if you haven't seen anything about Chaos to Connection, the parenting conference, it is on all my socials. I just want to mention it again because it is starting today and it runs for 5 days and it's completely free. So all you have to do is go to the conference website to get a free ticket and put your name and email in. I will put that link below in the show notes, but basically you can go to chaos2connectionconference.com, but 2 is the number 2. So not TO. So go there, grab your free ticket. You'll be able to see, like, pick and choose, use it like a menu, whatever sessions you can watch, you can. And if you want to have longer, like lifetime access to them, to those sessions, and have lots of freebies and resources and support and coaching as well from Lara and myself, then you might consider joining the VIP with us. Okay, I would love, last thing, if you have found this podcast and any of the episodes to be helpful and if you've taken anything away from it, I would love to ask you, it makes a big difference if you can rate or review it on wherever you listen. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. A big thank you in advance from me, and I hope to see some of you at the conference. Take care, and I will see you guys in the next episode.